What's up, guys? What's going on? I am nearly done with being sick or sounding sick. So let's do a video to switch up a little bit from the current theme and do one on difficult aspects. Roll the intro. All right, welcome. So today I'm gonna just do a little freestyling. I talk about this a lot on my Instagram at Jesse Innocent Astro, which is I'll just do an article where I'll spit out random astrology facts, all like just completely from my head, out of just one little thing about Pluto, one little thing about Saturn, a tough this, tough that. I like to people understand when it comes to difficult placements, right? Awareness is the first key. When you are aware of something that you have psychologically or unconscious, in your unconscious, or that could be a difficulty for you, understanding it is the first step. Once you understand it, you can generate a plan to combat it. It's like perfectionism, right? Like, for example, we can start there. Well, I have a whole post on. I think I made a video about perfectionism placements, right? So, for example, with Virgo Mars, and everything I say, it depends. This is why everyone needs to get a reading by one of the rare astrologers in the world that knows what they're doing. Just being honest, because a Virgo Mars can be very different in one person's chart than it is in someone else's. So, for example, like I actually have two people I know, I'm not gonna say any names. One has a Virgo Mars in an all earth and water chart, kind of a tough chart. And the other has theirs in this more dynamic chart, Sagittarius, Cancer moon. Regardless, like it was the way that it played out was completely different. For the first person, it was way more nitpicky and that very perfectionist, and that's how Virgo Mars can be, right? It's like, my shit doesn't stink, yours does though, and I'm very good at seeing how yours does. Like, you come over to my apartment, I go to your apartment, and oh, that's dirty, oh, that's off, oh, that kind of thing, and then that you go to their apartment and it's just very dirty. Now, Virgo Mars also, I want to say on the flip side, can be very, very good for, I'm going to write these down, hold on. It can be very, very good for a lot of things. It can be very good for organization, right? Like, I just met someone who is an accountant, and I was able to see that in her chart. Like, not see that without knowing it before, but just see like, oh, I've always said, like, if I were to need an accountant for something, I would want them to, I would like them to have Virgo Mars, right? Not because it makes people boring, but because it adds that responsibility needed. So. Cool. So next, and there's a lot more about perfectionism, by the way. So, yeah. So next, let's talk about Let's talk about Black Moon Lilith conjunct the Moon. Yeah. So this one is always kind of a mystery because I see it a good amount, and before I really started giving, I always gave serious consideration to Black Moon Lilith, but because it's not a luminary, it's a little bit different to diagnose. But I've started to see a pattern with Black Moon Lilith, especially in the moon, and relating to a mother usually, right? And I have trouble with the sun is the dad and the moon is the mom. I just, look, I'm a scientist at the end of the day. My take on astrology is 100% unique because it comes from me. It comes from my field work and obviously I respect a lot of astrologers who come before me, right? So it's a mix of that, but then it's also like, so there's certain truths that, are absolutes and that have been proven to me as being such, but then there's others that when I see it not reflected. So one of those is the sun and moon. Now with Black Moon Lilith and the moon, I almost always, and maybe, yeah, it's nearly always to me shown in female clients majority of my clients are female though. But it shows a mother, usually, right? A very controlling, narcissistic, like mother, right? Like nearly always it's narcissistic, or a mother that's described as a very like, yeah. And it's almost, you'd think like, doesn't that sound like Pluto moon? It's different. The Pluto moon seems to, I mean, I can speak for the Black Moon Lilith, is that there tends to be this very dark imprint left on the child. And yeah, so, and it's interesting too, because I've seen this a lot with clients. I need to get comfortable. I need to get a new chair soon over here. A lot of times it's in the 12th for me. Maybe that's just for me. But yeah, I've heard some terrible stories. Terrible stories, right? Like, you know, kind of on a psychological level, your emotions being mixed with your darker desires and your darker impulses, right? So it's like this intermingling of, you know, your moon is what makes you comfortable, and then it's like you're so aware of the darker side of your being and of the being of others because of a nurturing experience that was a certain way. So, you know, at a certain point, you have to become a master of yourself, right? And these are the types of placements that pushes someone down a road to become a psychologist or learn about psychology and astrology and these types of studies. But yeah, I feel like people with this, it's interesting. It can take some time, but there's certain placements that make it very obvious that you need to change, or that you need to look at some things. And that's ultimately why you have those placements, as the soul is here karmically to grow. And you have to come, that's why a lot of healers have trauma. Most healers, all healers, because you have to come in contact with this very difficult reality in order to catapult up. If I'm not, you know, am I saying that there's no healers that don't have trauma? I don't know. I haven't met many or any. But yeah, anyways. Then, you know, trauma is a very subjective word too, right? There could be micro traumas. There can, you know, which is a lot of mini traumas that ultimately equal one, you know, what would be one major one. So, yeah. Anyways, let me think about this one more. Yeah. So I've seen many people with this sort of hit out at other people close to them until they really, you know, go within themselves and heal on a deep psychological level. So, yeah, yep. Check the time. So, next, let's talk about Venus square Saturn. Yeah, why not? So Venus square Saturn is tough. And you think like, oh, Venus square Saturn, really bad for love. Well, it's really bad for self-esteem and inner confidence. You know, and hold on. 1 second, guys. Oh, what just happened? But yeah, so it's very, very tough in that respect. And I think my friend is here, so I'm gonna have to pause this. But yeah, basically people really tend to look at Venus as this, it's all about love, it's all about romance, blah, 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 right? But with this placement, there's usually this very big issue when it comes to giving and receiving nurturing. And hold on 1 second, I'm gonna pause this video. Okay, anyways, I'm back. My video got cut into two. But as I was saying with Saturn, Saturn, Venus square, yeah, it's just very hard in the sense that you know, your psychological development, you could push one more within and have, you know, one to have more insecurities, which can lead to, you know, skipping some social steps, right? Especially if it's a more introverted chart. And these people can be very, you know, criticism can be very tough, and a lot of times they can come from families where they're criticized a lot. So they can develop these insecurities, and then it just gets reminded to them every time they try to put themselves out there in a creative or loving way, and it's tough. So parents with kids with these, it's really important to really, really nurture them and teach them how to, you know, use, giving them good language, right? Around nurturing language and all that stuff. And I think, there's too much of this placement sometimes, same with Saturn in the seventh. I often get them as clients and they ask me about love, or like they make it a point for me to talk about love. And I almost wonder sometimes, is this like a karmic thing, right? Because they are often so, not in a codependent way necessarily, but they want relationships so bad a lot of the times, people with this aspect, and it's just not there. And they need to just keep working on themselves and get better at vulnerability. And it can give a very serious approach to relationships. Like, you see how I was just talking about that? It's almost like, like relationships and love and all that, the energy should be more fun. And I know different people have different languages in that respect, but yeah, it can give quite a serious one. So, yeah. But overall, it's a square, and anything with Saturn, it can make someone, have to work hard over time and get very good when it comes to, a very good chance of having a very long-lasting marriage or relationship later on. So, yeah. Anyways, back to where I was at, because I was recording it, or I was talking to this camera thinking I was recording, but I wasn't. So let's talk about, let me type this out. Let's talk about Neptune in the third house, a little bit of a more random one. And do I want to do Pisces Mercury? I don't know. We'll see. Maybe those two. But yeah, so I think, I guess, yeah, we can do Neptune third house, just the Neptunian effect on, Mercury and whatnot. But what can happen is that communication can become a bit foggy, and there can be lots of misunderstandings. And now there are some very beautiful things. Like, I feel like people with Neptune third or Pisces Mercury have this amazing way of being able to really hear someone in their entirety, right? Really not think, like, for example, and I have Pisces Mercury, so but like different people, and I've seen with these types of placements, it's like they're so good, like they could hear someone and they'll never judge that person as being less intelligent, even if they're not, or even if they are. They'll really, really listen, and compassionately listen, and not put out this energy of superiority, right? And with that said, it's also very psychic, and there is that tendency to, it's like, you're so in touch with the collective unconscious and so many energies that it's very easy when you're around certain people or in certain environments to take on the thoughts and the opinions of those people, of those environments, whatnot. So yeah, sometimes people with this, like especially with the Neptune third, more than Pisces Mercury, it can feel like nobody is like listening to them, like truly listening to them. While they're really good listeners, they're not getting listened to. So yeah, there can be a lot of miscommunications, right? Where there's what they want to say versus what comes out, right? So this is part of the issue with Neptune in Mercury, right? Where it's like you need to be more, get like very, very good at the high level, abstract, spiritual type of communication. But then sometimes the base level communication is hard, right? So, and this is one of several placements where people can think, because they grow up in this society, this world, that there's something wrong with their way of thinking. If they don't get an outlet or a way to see that, this is just how they are, it's not, it's not worse. Everything has its advantages and disadvantages. If you're a very, very logical person, and let's say you excel in some field that requires a type of logic, but then you're not good when it comes to abstract thinking or thinking outside the box or thinking, with respect to something like spirituality, creativity, right? So there's always, a double-edged sword for these types of things. Besides that, let's think. Yeah, I think that they just have to understand that what they have is a gift, and to try to unlock, try to unlock what comes with that gift. All right, let's think. So next we can talk about, I was writing about this one recently, squares and oppositions between the sun, moon, and ascendant. And so let me just write this down. So what I mean here is that, so say you are a Leo rising. You're a Leo rising and you are a Leo sun, but then you're a Pisces moon. So, okay, that would be a quincunx. But I guess so instead of Leo, well, I guess it's not about what type of aspect. It's about, if you think of the ascendant as the mask, the sun is the essence of who you are, your identity, and the moon is what runs the show beneath the surface, the core. If the core is way different, so if you have a very emotional core, like a water moon, Pisces moon, Cancer moon, Scorpio moon, but then it's more introverted too. Let's say it's like a fourth house or eighth house moon. But then like the outside, what people see is more introverted, right? Leo rising, Gemini rising. It can be tough, and especially if the sun goes along with the rising more. Those are seen both more than the moon. So yeah, I think that from that standpoint, I've seen it with so many clients, with myself, because I'm Leo rising, Pisces sun, Sag moon, so it's not it just creates a split in the personality where it's like, how do you fulfill, and this goes for people born on full moons, right? With sun opposite moon, or born with sun square moon, that's what I have, or just with the ascendant involved, and it just creates this difficulty, right? Where you have basically these two parts that might be completely different. And psychologically, you have to almost use parts work to kind of figure out, okay, this is the personality and the needs of this part A, and this is the personality and the needs of part B. Because many people, what they do is that they favor one of them and they only feed one of them and not both, right? And it basically leads to them going and getting that other need, the need of the other one met, especially in a sun opposite moon, in a partner. So, we don't want to have to rely on other people for energies, right? So it's very important to, I say to feed both mouths, or to give both sides, or to define both. And you could say, well, what if I have like 3 personalities? I get it, but you can usually boil it down to something that's more internal and something that's more external, more active, more passive. All right. So, okay, so we can talk about Saturn. No, we talk about Saturn. Okay, let's talk about a 6th house moon. Where am I at? 1040. So 6th house moon is definitely a hard placement. It doesn't mean that everyone with a 6th house moon needs to freak out. Obviously, aspects to the moon are more impactful, but the 6th house rules every day, our day-to-day routine. So when we have a moon in the 6th house, we experience our emotions heavily every day on a daily basis. So especially, when I see this and it's in a tough position, the moon already, like it's got, some tough aspects to Saturn and, Neptune or Uranus, Pluto, Chiron, Black Moon Lilith. It's tough, and when I speak to people with this, there is a lot of the times this struggle mental health wise, because it's like, how does one, constantly deal with their emotions, right? Like we all have emotions, but 6th house moon people, it seems like their emotions are more present. Their emotions are more, they're harder to just like put to the side, So it brings that element of life into focus a lot. So yeah, it's just difficult, and obviously it depends on the moon sign a lot, as I said, the aspects and the rulership, the degrees, all that. But I've seen a lot of perfectionism with this placement, where even like you could call it emotional perfectionism, where people can like overthink so much to the point that they can't shut it off, or thinking that they need to think in a perfect way, or that they need to, like getting frustrated themselves and whatnot. So yeah, it's definitely not an easy one. And a lot of the times, yeah, there can be that intellectualization of emotions. So yeah, it's just like a nonstop kind of personal emotional involvement in whatever comes up, right? So it requires a lot of work, and it's not easy, as I said. So next, let's talk about lack of fire in a chart. So hold on. So lack of fire in a chart is tough, especially when you have it accompanied with like a Chiron and a fire sign, or Saturn and a fire sign. But what I mean by this is Aries, Sagittarius, Leo in, the big six, so Sun, Moon, Rising, Venus, Mars, Mercury, and then you could add Jupiter. Yeah, it's tough. People who don't have any fire, and yes, there are aspects that can kind of add or make up for this dynamism a little bit. Like, if you have Mars square Pluto, for example, or Mars, Mars aspecting Pluto, Mars aspecting Uranus, it can definitely do some things. And then there's degrees as well. But overall, especially if there's mostly water and earth, it can make motivation really, really tough. It can make it really tough to have passions, right? And to go towards different things in life. So I feel for people who have that, because, people who have a lot of fire, they tend to find it quite easy to just jump into something and become passionate about it. It's not that hard. And then from that, and have fun too, right? But sometimes people who lack fire, they can just lack that zest for life, right? I said sometimes. And the initiatory part of, let's say, starting a business, or beginning to study something, or spontaneously going out and having fun, right? That can be very hard for them. So in essence, any limitation of any element is not easy, right? But fire, I've really seen in today's age be tough. I don't have any earth, and so many people I know don't have any earth. I'm probably going to do a video. I might do a video after this on just lacking elements in general. But yeah, fire is not easy. And let's see. Okay, so Pluto with the sun, hard aspect sun. Yeah, so that one, we'll finish there for today. We have to put these two videos together. But yeah, so basically Pluto in, a hard aspect of the sun, square, opposition, quincunx, even conjunction, it's very tough because the ego, it wants to develop in this more calm, smooth way, right? And this, oftentimes, there's a very destabilizing energy from youth, right? That either makes or breaks the person. Either they are able to let go, which is what Pluto ultimately does in transits and in aspects. It's about letting go and surrendering. People who do not do this can be very uptight, very control freaky, or can be extreme control freaks and very power hungry and vindictive, right? So with this one, I've seen this show up, especially when I've seen charts of people I grew up with that I never even looked at astrology back then. There's this immense, excuse me, there's this immense pressure, to show other people how perfect they are and how well put together of a human they are, right, in the public eyes, right? And as I said, yeah, they can be control freaks, and it's like I said earlier, it's not. A lot of times it's dad, but it's not always. I just look at it as the masculine element of the psychological upbringing, and it leads them to some sort of discomfort on a psychological level. And yeah, so it's all about learning to let go and accept who you are. There could have been this massive pressure to be someone that you weren't. There's a lot of potentials and ways this plays out. I've seen it with very competitive fathers or very dark Plutonian fathers at times. I know I said I don't like to go that direction, but it's just something I've observed. I've observed it in some very wealthy families too, which is interesting, where everything like in the family appears as like the perfect family, beautiful, everyone loves each other, smiling, happy, all that. But then I see the charts and I'm like, it's I can see through the astrology, through the astrology that's not as perfect as they make it seem. There's some secrets there too. So yeah, with Pluto, it's tough, and it's really kind of rising above it and being vulnerable and allowing the ego death. It's so much easier said than done, right? But this individual will have seen the darker side of reality early on, and it's important for them to know that there's light in the world, there's good in the world, and they're very good psychologically, just naturally they're very, very good at seeing through shit. It can make them very good in business, and in many domains. But far too often you see people with Pluto hard aspects wanting to dominate in business and push their influence to a point where it's almost making up for an insecurity. So you can still have that competitive edge, but without the need to like take it too far. Anyways, I'm gonna end it there. Thank you so much. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm gonna have to figure out how to attach these. Well, my editor is, but yeah. And if you're looking for a reading, let me know. Go on my Instagram at Jesse Innocent Astro, or just go to jesseinnocentastrology.com. It should be linked in this video. And yeah, let me know anything in the comments to any videos you'd like to see. I hope you guys are enjoying these and the series on the signs, high and low manifestations. So thank you. Ciao.